I messed up tonight. I lost another fight. I still mess up, but I'll just start again. I keep falling down. I keep on hitting the ground. I always get enough to see what's next. Birds don't just fly, they fall down and get up. Nobody learns without getting it wrong. I won't give up, no I won't give in till I reach the end and then I'll start again. No I won't leave, I wanna try everything, I wanna try even though I could fail.
Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome back to Zootopia Minute, the minute-by-minute podcast where we review and analyze everybody's favorite hit Disney film of 2016, Zootopia. I am your host, Simul, joined as always by my co-host...
Choco, and the voice you just did was the one I used to try to wake up your Google Home thing.
Okay, sure. Whatever. Well, it is a new year, and we hope that all of you listeners had a wonderful new year and are having a wonderful 2020 so far.
And happy Year of the Rat. We are actually recording this on the Chinese New Year, so it's the Year of the Rat right now as we start.
And on this episode of Zootopia Minute, we are here to talk about Minute 76. So for those of you following along, that's going to be from timestamp 1:16:00 to 1:16:59. This minute begins, as always, right where we left off. Judy is up in the mayor's office with Chief Bogo. Remember, the new mayor is Bellwether because Lionheart has been deposed. So they just had brought Judy up to take a look at this poster with her face on it, and it looks as though they want her to be the public face of the ZPD. However, Judy does not seem too enthralled by this idea, and instead of kind of taking them up on the offer, she ends up apparently trying to resign? Oh no. So, not a whole lot going on visually in this minute. We are up here in this office, but lots of dialogue to go through. So, the very first thing we have is Bellwether saying, "They trust you," referring to the animals in the city because all this chaos is going on. And so that's why Chief Bogo and I want you to be the public face of the ZPD. And when she says Chief Bogo and I, she kind of gives Bogo a look like, it's us. We figured this out together, didn't we? In her sort of bubbly attitude. So Judy is still staring at this poster, and remember, this is the poster we first looked at in the previous minute. It's got her face on it, her smiling face. She's the poster child of the police force here. But she says, I'm not a hero. I came here to make the world a better place, but I think I broke it. So, yeah, Judy's having some issues. Remember, she feels kind of guilty about all this stuff that has happened since that press conference with the city up in turmoil, predators and prey turning against each other, and she feels responsible. So, any initial thoughts from you on this? What's going on here, Choco?
Well, it's a spirit of 76, and you were saying as we were watching this minute, it's not a lot happening in this moment. Yes, it's a lot of dialogue, but I actually think we do have some interesting character moments and developments within this minute right here. Right off the back, something I actually wanted to mention in the previous minute, but doesn't appear until this minute, is the Zootopia flag in the background.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as you guys might know, I'm a what's the term?
Vexillologist?
As you guys might know, I'm a vexillologist. I've been... It's a weird word, okay? Everyone, vexillologist, whatever. Anyways, I love flags. I love the history of flags. I love designing flags. I've professionally been designing flags for about 10 years now for military units and companies and schools. So, of course, as a lover of flags, I was looking out for the Zootopia flag throughout this movie, and this is really the only time you see the Zootopia flag, and you don't even see the full flag. You only get a sliver of the flag folded up. If you guys actually have seen the Zootopia flag somewhere online, it's most likely that it's a design by me. I basically had to build and recreate the entire Zootopia flag just from that one tiny scene right there. And the interesting thing is, in that Zootopia flag, they actually used the same reef image that was used for the UN flag. So just want to point that out.
Yeah, it looks like almost exactly the same vector now you mention it. How do you know, though, Choco, that the Zootopia flag isn't literally just that little corner of it that we can see and the rest is white? You know, kind of a stretch, I think, to imply what the rest of it looks like.
Okay, sure. So you're saying that it's just that specific part and everything else
Yes,
is white.
and the way that it falls on the pole, the way it's kind of curled and folded, it's only the visible parts with color on them have any color at all. If it's not shown, it's white.
I'm going to try to design that flag and see what it looks like then.
Yes. Then you'll be able to trace and see how much of it you had to come up with, how much you had to embellish.
True.
I do think there are some interesting things going on here, despite it, mostly being dialogue. Judy has this sort of long pause as she's looking at the poster after this offer that they made, when she says, I'm not a hero. I came here to make the world a better place, but I think I broke it. And remember, that was her goal from the very beginning of this film. She wants to make the world a better place by being a police officer. When we saw her childhood in that play.
Everyone wants to make the world a better place.
Well, I don't know. That's a stretch too.
Nearly every person born throughout all of human... Well, these are animals, but throughout all of human history, probably said we want to make the world a better place. But how many people really have made the world a better place? She's just too idealistic.
How many people say that versus mean it also? I think that's an important distinction. But that's kind of a bunny trail that we don't...
Do you think she means it?
I don't know. I mean, I think you're supposed to sympathize her with this whole time. I think she generally has good intentions here, right? So
I kind of like that Chief Bogo both reassures her and also brings her back to Earth and humbles her by saying, yeah, I think the world's always been broken.
Chief Bogo responding to her as soon as she says this, when she says she thinks she broke it. Bogo says, don't give yourself too much credit, Hops. The world has always been broken. That's why we need good cops. Like you.
That's how I'm feeling about the
look at that.
society right now.
He doesn't break eye contact with her at all when saying that. And remember, Bogo has been Judy's biggest critic this whole time as she was trying to solve this case, right? So I don't know, there's mad respect for Bogo right here because you can tell that he's like at least being sincere. He doesn't necessarily maybe feel like, or you don't necessarily get the sense that he's being disingenuous. I think he generally realizes, yeah, I was in the wrong here.
Well, this is where I actually like the visuals of this scene specifically, because if you watch the movie up until this point, Bogo has had that harsh, stern face. He's actively making a scowling face. This is the only point, up until this minute, this is really the only point that he actually relaxes his face. So if you look at the moment when he's saying that, he does not have that scowl or harsh raised brow anymore. His face looks really, really relaxed. And I just love that little visual touch because if this was any other animation company, I don't even think they'll pay attention to that detail. I just like the fact that I had him with a relaxed face at this scene to show he actually means it.
Yeah, I think that does make it all the more powerful, just because it's not a face we see from him often. It's like he's reserved that face for when he really means it, you know what I mean? Another weird thing real quick before we move on, this scene, I'm sure we've got a shot of this before, but this is probably the first time I've really noticed it. But if you look at Bellwether's hands, so she's a sheep. Sheep have cloven hooves, and the way they turn that into a dexterous appendage that can hold things in this movie is kind of interesting and creative. They kind of they divided her hoof into what looks like 3 digits, 3 kind of fingers or 2 fingers and a thumb, which is not what a real lamb has, obviously, but they've embellished it to make these characters more anthro. But I just think it looks kind of creepy. I don't know. I don't want her touching me with those weird little sheep fingers.
Okay, well, yeah, take your furry privilege elsewhere.
I don't have
There's a lot of hoofed
I'm not a furry.
animals.
Yes, there are. No. Okay. Well, I mean, okay, no. Good point, though. That's the same kind of thing you'll see when people make fursuits of animals that don't have hands. They have to kind of improvise a bit. So, it's neat. The way they came up with it here for this movie, I think that's better than if they were to just give her, like, human-like hands. You know what I mean?
Okay, furry.
It's a little weird, but it's another sort of attention to detail thing that I kind of like. But anyway, back to Bogo. So we had this tender moment here where Bogo's showing his appreciation for Judy, calling her a good cop. Judy then responds, with all due respect, sir, a good cop is supposed to serve and protect, help the city, and not tear it apart. And then she kind of slowly unclips and takes off her badge and goes to put it on the desk, saying, I don't deserve this badge. And this is something really interesting here. Tell me if you agree with this, but when Judy looks up at Bogo to respond to him, she almost has this sort of furrowed brow kind of look, kind of like what you were talking about with Bogo, but to me, it almost looks like skepticism. And I was thinking, is this her being sort of incredulous about the praise she's now getting from Bogo, considering what he's put her through already? Or maybe is she skeptical of what the city is now trying to do with her? Is she saying, not only do I feel bad for what I did, but I'm not on board with what the city is trying to do. I don't like the way the city is trying to tackle this issue that I started of dividing people.
I don't necessarily think that. I just think she doesn't want any more responsibility thrust upon her that could result in more harm done. That's kind of the mindset I was getting from her.
I mean, she has done quite a bit of damage, right? So yeah, maybe it's the responsible thing to do. To me, though, that specific face she's making, it looks like there's something more than just sadness. It almost looks like anguish or, like I said before, some sort of disbelief or skepticism or something. Maybe I'm reading into it too much, but I don't know. Because think about it, it almost does seem like the city's being a little insensitive to the whole issue.
Well, it's damage control. Almost any human equivalent situation, there would need to be a form of damage control, and I kind of think that happened.
Right, and maybe Judy's not on board with that, and maybe that's part of why she seems to be resigning now. Part of it, anyway, Maybe not the whole picture. Well, Chief Bogo seems kind of surprised by this and goes, hops? And Bellwether, who now has a very sort of surprised and upset look on her face, says, Judy, you've worked so hard to get here. And that's actually where the minute ends. So just some dialogue in this minute that sort of lets us begin to see maybe the final consequence of Judy's actions, where now it looks like maybe she's actually thinking of resigning her post that she worked so hard to get, as Bellwether points out here. But whether that goes through or what happens in the aftermath, I don't know. We'll have to wait until the next minute. Any final thoughts?
All right. Can't wait for the next minute. So we'll have announcements, more details at the end of this episode, but our next minute will be live at HarmonyCon, where I will be a community guest.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's it for the minute portion. It's a short one today, but plenty has happened since our last episode, including the year changing over. It is the 20s again, guys. I am so excited to bring back all that swing music.
Okay, for the last 2 or 3 years, I was somewhat annoyed that almost every single FurryCon used the Roaring Twenties as their theme. And I was like, okay, and it was all Art Deco and Great Gatsby style, and I was like, okay, sure. But now that we're back at the 20s, this is probably the one year we should have the Art Deco Roaring Twenties as a theme. But no con is doing it this year. But they were all doing it for the last 3 years. I don't know, I'm confused.
Yeah, well, you can't always get everything perfect, but I do agree. I don't know. I mean, here's what's interesting to me. I feel like a few things have sort of resurged because culture does go through cycles. There's nothing new under the sun, right? Something that I've noticed is there has been a resurgence in hairstyles from that era. The kind of undercut, short buzz on the sides but long on top thing for men has come back, and that was a big thing in the 20s and the 30s. Swing music, folk music is kind of making a return. I've noticed a lot of popular music on the radio today, or especially if you listen to quote-unquote alternative stations like 107.7 The End here in Seattle, a lot of pop, but not the most pop of pop, the kind of sub pop, has this sort of folky vibe to it now. I don't know. That's just something I've noticed. Things are changing, but things do come in cycles,
Yeah, I think we've, off the show, we've talked about this idea that there's a theory, there's one theory that was proposed that there are only 4 generations, and each of these generations go in cycles over and over again.
Yeah, because there's 4 sides of a square, which is one face of a cube, because time is a cube.
Yeah, time cube.
Time is a cube.
I hope he never uploads that video, but he has a video recording of me talking about the time cube, but and we're not going to get into that. Cube. But actually, we have I spent basically the last 2 weeks at your place. Beforehand, I was the last 2 episodes. If you guys listen to the last 2 episodes, I was at Simul's place for Anthro Northwest, and then I just spent the last 2 weeks of this new decade at his place again. We apologize. I think we were planning to record a new episode in person, but just never materialized. Yeah.
Well, we weren't at my place the whole time either. I mean, we were mostly distracted by the fact that we drove about 2.5 hours north of Seattle to go to Vancouver for Vancouver Pony Expo.
Yeah, it was my first time ever out of the U.S.
That's right.
I've never left the States before. I got a passport just for this occasion. I was scared because I've heard all these horror stories from vendor and artist friends crossing the border with stuff, and I had to get all these tax forms, paperwork, a spreadsheet with all my items I was planning to sell to make sure we went over smoothly, and when we got there, they basically just asked us, "What are you coming here for?" We told them a convention. They're like, "How long are you staying? Just for the weekend? Is this your car?" You said yes, and they just let us go. It was less than probably 45 seconds.
So, yeah, that was real surprising to me. I have probably crossed the U.S.-Canada border by car at least 100 times in my life, at least.
Okay, Mr. Privilege.
I used to go up to Canada every summer pretty much. Haven't been for a while. I really want to. But, yeah, I haven't gone to Vancouver, that area, too often. The last time I was up there was actually for BronyCon, if any of you bronies out there remember that convention. Vancouver's kind of the spiritual successor to that. But yeah, I was surprised. I think it was the shortest border stop I've ever made. It was like 45 seconds. Like you said, it's just, hey, who are you guys? Where are you going? Is this your vehicle? Have a nice day. After all the prep and all the stress, I remember like, if you've ever had to go across a border, it's so nerve-wracking, even if you're not doing anything wrong, right? It's kind of like when a cop is driving behind you. Even if you're not speeding or doing anything wrong, it's just nerve-wracking because you're on edge about doing everything perfectly, and there's just so much that could go wrong. So we were both, I think, kind of nervous just because of all the vending stuff, right? And like, oh, it's all the tax stuff ready to go. But no, it was super easy to get across. And then once we did, it was just a short drive up to Vancouver, or actually Richmond, where the convention was.
I'm surprised how actually nervous you were on the way back, because we got some Tim Hortons donut hose on the way back, and you were so worried that they wouldn't allow us to bring the donut hose.
Confiscate us, yeah.
Yeah, so we hid them.
Gonna take away our Timbits. No one takes my bits.
Well, what's even funnier is that someone who was working for you for your con crossed the border later, and even though he wasn't selling, he was stopped and all his stuff was searched. So we were lucky, I think.
So there were a few things going on with that, and he wasn't the only person I'd heard from that did have issues. First of all, he went through a different border crossing than we did. He went through the Blaine crossing. We went through Peace Arch, and for whatever reason, at the Blaine crossing, they were a lot more thorough, I guess. They ended up questioning my friend for like an hour, and when they had heard what kind of convention he was going to, they started like... I don't even really want to get into it. They just asked him some very invasive questions about the whole thing and made some insinuations about a pony convention that, you know, if you're familiar with kind of some of the bad rap that pony fandom or furry fandom even gets, then you might have some idea of what kind of questions a border person might ask. But yeah, it was just rough. He was stuck there for like an hour, and eventually they let him through. But apparently a lot of people got stopped and searched who were going to the con. Didn't help also that there was a hemp convention going on the same weekend.
Yeah, and it wasn't just driving across the border. We had friends who were flying in, who also got stopped and searched. So it was a very crazy experience. And what's funny is that wasn't even the first con of the new decade for me. So between the last episode you guys listened to and now, I've done 3 conventions back to back already. That's insane. It's not even the first month of the new decade is not even over, and I've already done 3 conventions. So
How I think you were saying you've spent more time at my house than at your new apartment.
Oh yeah, right? I moved into my new place like right before Christmas, and literally New Year's Day I flew out to Phoenix to go to a furry convention in Scottsdale.
Yeah.
And then I flew up to see you in Seattle before we went to Vancouver, then went back to Seattle before flying to San Jose for further confusion before flying back to Orlando, but then actually going to the Disney parks for about 3 days as a mini break before finally coming home. So yes, I've stayed at your house this year longer than I've stayed in my new place.
Pretty crazy. I mean, that's what happens when you travel for work, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's not the end of it either. We do have a convention coming up pretty soon here. And as Choco mentioned earlier, that is when our next episode is going to take place. Both of us are going to be at HarmonyCon in Dallas, Texas, which is a second year My Little Pony fan convention. This is the con that last year got swatted, and the hotel had to be evacuated because someone thought it would be funny to call 911 with a fake bomb threat.
You weren't there last year, were you?
No, I was not.
I was there, and I took that famous screen cap of the swatting where the SWAT members aim their assault rifles at a Twilight Sparkle plushie. So yes, I will be a community guest at HarmonyCon this year. I'm actually designing their sponsor pins for them this year, so be free if you're there. Check out their new pin designs. We'll be doing our Brony History panel and our Zootopia Minute panel.
Yeah, so we've got those two different events that we're doing together. The first one is going to be Friday night at 10:45 p.m. is Brony Fandom History with Choco and Simul. That's going to be in the Chinaberry room, so be sure to check that one out. And then the following day, Saturday, Zootopia Minute Live at 8:15 p.m. in the Mesquite room. So those are two different panels that we both will be on that you guys can check out if you're going to HarmonyCon in Dallas, and that is going to be from February 7th through the 9th.
So yeah, be sure to check that out. The panel will probably have a few surprises there, so sure check that out. I'll also be vending there, so feel free to stop by and say hi. Simul will probably be there at the Everfree booth, so we'll both be there if you want to say hi.
That's right. We'll both have tables, so come say hi to both of us separately at opposite ends of the building, probably. Who knows? Should be fun. And it'll be my first time in Texas, aside from layovers, so I'm excited to see what that's like. Okay. All right. So I think that's going to do it for this episode of Zootopia Minute. As always, thank you guys so much for listening and watching. If you did enjoy this episode of the podcast, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter at Zootopia Minute, like us on Facebook. And if you have any questions or comments at all, any feedback you want to give us whatsoever, you can always send that stuff to zootopiaminute@gmail.com, and we will be sure to respond to you there. All right, guys, so that's going to be it. Until HarmonyCon, we will see you there.
Bye, everybody. Have a good 2020 and happy Year of the Rat.
Happy Year of the Rat.